Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Alan Ray Sean Bowen. Bowen was shot and killed on Tuesday, September 3rd, 2019 in the 7500 block of South Figueroa Street in the Vermont Knolls neighborhood of South LA, according to LA County coroner records. Frank Lee Fisher Jr. was subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. Travion Winkler was a member of the Rollin Harlem Crips. On August 29, 2019, Winkler was fatally shot near the corner of 75th and Flower Streets in Los Angeles, within territory claimed by a different gang, the 7-4 Hoovers. The person arrested for shooting Winkler was a member of the Hoovers. However, law enforcement ultimately determined several weeks later that the murder was not committed at the direction of or for the benefit of the Hoovers. LAPD Detective Patrick Howell testified that it appeared to be a crime of opportunity, during which the perpetrator attempted to take a large sum of money from Winkler. At the time of Winkler's murder, LAPD officer Chad Scott was assigned to the Southwest Division Gang Enforcement Detail. His duties included monitoring the activities of the Rolling 30s. Defendant Fisher was a member of the Rolling 30s. A few hours after Winkler's murder, Officer Scott went to Martin Luther King Jr. Park, a Rolling 30s stronghold. He encountered a large number of Rolling 30s, more than a normal given day. Officer Scott testified that the Rolling 30s in MLK Park were aware that Winkler had been killed in LAPD's 77th Division, which included Hoover territory. Several young Rolling 30s members kept throwing around the term snoover, which Scott testified was a derogatory term for members of the Hoovers. Although the Hoovers and the 30s didn't share territorial boundaries, Officer Scott testified they were rivals because the Hoovers don't align with either the Crips or the Bloods and consider themselves everybody killers. LAPD Detective Scott Farmer testified about surveillance video footage taken on September 3rd, 2019 that was introduced into evidence. Video from MLK Park showed Rolling 30s gang member Kevin Green arriving in a Jeep Compass Trailhawk around 5:14 p.m. on September 3rd, 2019. The white Jeep had several distinctive features, including a black roof, a black stripe on the hood, and black trim around the wheel arches. Defendant Fisher arrived at MLK Park around 5:38 p.m. in a red-colored Chrysler Aspen SUV. He was wearing a white shirt, black sweatpants with a white mark on the left leg, and black shoes with large white lettering on the sides. Surveillance video showed defendant walking toward the area of the Winkler Memorial. Surveillance video showed defendant Fisher and Green walking to the Jeep around 9:29 p.m. Defendant got into the driver's seat and Green walked around to the passenger side. Defendant was still wearing a white shirt. Another person, whom Detective Farmer identified as Rolling 30s member Liddell Hurd, got into the front passenger seat, got out and walked away, and then came back a few minutes later. Footage from earlier in the evening showed Hurd was wearing a dark colored t-shirt with an A on it, gray sweatpants, and black and white shoes. When he got into the Jeep, however, he was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt over the same gray sweatpants and black and white shoes. Based on his review of the footage, Detective Farmer did not believe that Green or anyone else was in the Jeep when defendant and Hurd began to leave. The Jeep left MLK Park around 9:35 p.m., making a right turn onto eastbound 39th Street. Video clips from numerous surveillance cameras and LAPD poll cameras showed what Detective Farmer testified was the same distinctive Jeep driving from the area of Slauson and Hoover to a liquor store on 76th Street in Figueroa, about 1.5 blocks from where Winkler was killed. Surveillance video from the liquor store showed victims Bowen and TV walking across 76th Street in Figueroa around 10:29 p.m. The video also showed a white SUV with a dark roof and black trim around the wheel arches, driving south on Figueroa. The SUV turned right onto westbound 76th Street, and the victim and TV entered the liquor store. An SUV with similar features drove east on 76th Street shortly thereafter. Detective Farmer testified the SUV's new direction of travel was consistent with the path of travel that the victim and TV walked as they were walking into the liquor store. At 10:32 p.m., the victim was standing outside the liquor store, apparently waiting for TB, who was still inside. At 10:33 p.m., two people wearing hooded sweatshirts approached the liquor store on foot. One of them was wearing dark colored pants with a Nike swoosh on the left leg and shoes with the word air spelled out on the side. After TB exited the store, Detective Farmer testified the person with the air shoes appeared to have produced some sort of firearm and pointed it at TB. The other person in the hooded sweatshirt, who was wearing gray sweatpants and shoes with a white toe cap, was also holding a gun. At approximately 10:34 p.m., a muzzle flash came from the latter person's gun and the victim collapsed backwards onto the sidewalk. TB went back inside the liquor store and the two individuals in the hooded sweatshirts fled eastbound on 76th Street. TB emerged from the liquor store at approximately 10:36 p.m. and walked southbound on Figueroa. Miss Alvarez, whose boyfriend was a friend of TB's, testified that she lived a block away from the liquor store. On the night of September 3rd, 2019, TB banged on her door frantically. He was crying and threw himself on the floor. Miss Alvarez testified that TB told her they killed him. TB also told her that TB said this is Hoover Street when he came out of the store, and then after that, the people started shooting, and he ran towards her house. On cross-examination, Miss Alvarez said that TB told her some N-words from Harlem shot and killed the victim. LAPD officers responded to a call about a shooting at the liquor store. The victim was lying on the ground unresponsive and apparently dead. A small folding box cutter was next to him, as were expended cartridge casings. A deputy medical examiner opined that the victim died of multiple gunshot wounds. One gunshot wound entered the victim's shoulder, traveled through his lung, and lodged in his spine. Another entered through his back and passed through mostly soft tissue. A third struck his forearm. A deputy medical examiner opined that the manner of death was homicide. The officers who responded to the scene immediately canvassed the area for surveillance video. They ultimately collected approximately 50 hours of video from a broader area, as discussed above. Detective Farmer noticed the SUV in the liquor store video, used Google to determine the make and model, and used data from license plate readers to determine if the SUV was a rental. On the morning of October 24, 2019, the LAPD executed a search warrant at Defendant Fisher's apartment. Defendant was not present. Police were looking for Nike sweatpants and air shoes, both of which they found in defendant's bedroom. Detective Farmer testified that the recovered sweatpants and shoes were consistent with the pants and shoes seen on surveillance video at MLK Park that defendant Fisher was wearing, and with those worn by one of the individuals who was at the liquor store on September 3rd, 2019. On January 11, 2023, the DA charged defendant Fisher with murder, attempted murder, and unlawful possession of a firearm by a felon, including multiple allegations. Following the trial, the jury found defendant guilty of first-degree murder. It was unable to reach a verdict on the remaining charges and allegations. The court declared a mistrial on the remaining charges and granted the prosecution's subsequent motion to dismiss the gang and gun allegations in the interest of justice. The court sentenced defendant Fisher to a term of 25 years to life. Alan Ray Sean Bowen was 19 years old at the time of death.